Okay, can you guys see my screen okay? It looks like there's a pop-up that came up there. Apologize here. All right. Um, so that's about my company, about myself, just to get you know, I've been in the accounting industry for about 15 years. I actually work and teach at a local university for about 10 years, both in person and virtually in this format like we're doing now, right? Imagine teaching accounting 101 via Zoom. All right, so I've been doing that for a while and licensed by the IRS as an enrolled agent as well. All right, so let's kind of get into talking about today's agenda. So we have things we're going to talk through today on this agenda. The first item is we're going to look at different mistakes that we can make in our client onboarding process and how we can improve on that process. Right? The next item is going to be once we identify our mistakes, how do we create a smooth process to overcome those mistakes? Ultimately, how do we create a smooth client experience? Right? And lastly, which we'll demo this today, we'll learn about how do we do things with our client onboarding, how do you automate that? And we're going to use Ignition and Financial Sense to automate this process using Zapier. So we're actually going to go through the process of creating that Zapier. All right, creating the Zapier, and then we're going to go through the process of actually then creating the Ignition and having it move into Financial Sense to watch our creation in live time. All right, that's what our goal is for today. And as always, if you have any questions, put it in the Q&A as we go and go from there. Also, before we get into things, I just want to make note in your webinar screen here, there's a piece of paper on the side. For me, it's the right-hand side that says resources. Everything you see here is in the resources tab, right? Some shortcuts, how to get to and from things, along with the PowerPoint itself. Right. So if you have to always come back to this or you want to download those now or links, you have those available as we go through things. Right. And as always, any questions, please put it in the Q&A. I know we have a couple people in the background from Ignition and Financial Sense responding back with any questions, and we'll also answer any questions at the end as we go too. All right. Yep. Oh, thank you. Yep, we have started. Thank you. Yeah, if you get stuck, let us know. We'll see what we can do to try to help you out. So, all right. So let's move on here from our agenda. So let's talk about the mistakes. A lot of you, I think, have maybe witnessed these mistakes one way or the other. Whether you've been a brand new firm today or whether you have been in business for 20 odd years, we all probably have encountered these mistakes. All right. All right. The first mistake that you probably might have is sometimes you don't have any clear scopes of work, right? Sometimes the client doesn't know what we're going to do, and sometimes we don't know what the client expects us to do. There's not a clear scope of work. Right? The second mistake we have, which I am a victim of this before I went through Ignition, is the manual Word documents that are prone to errors. All right. Um, I when creating a proposal in Word, one of the issues I've always had with that is trying to make sure all the items within the engagement are within the Word document. And that's where I get stuck sometimes, where I might leave something out or is not as clear or consistent among our engagements. All right, so that's sometimes a mistake there. A big thing for myself, which we'll talk about result of automating this process, is chasing payments after work is done. I especially when starting my firm, there's plenty of times where I say, let's do the work, but after we start the work, I don't get payment or I have to chase after my payment later on down the road, right? So to help with my workflow onboarding process, I started collecting payments or at least the information up front. Right? And also sometimes it's a clunky, unprofessional client experience. I'm not gonna lie, I don't do well with spelling. All right. So when I create a engagement letter in Word or if I get something, there can be spelling mistakes, that type of thing. Or sometimes it's kind of funky where the client gets their invoice for new services 3 days later, they don't pay it, then you have to go and go after the client a couple times. The client may not like that experience. It's become easier sometimes through our automation by getting it all in one shot. Right. So that's kind of the mistakes that I've experienced and I'm sure some of you have all experienced. All right. So let's talk about how do we create this smooth onboarding experience before we get to the automation aspect of this presentation. So here's kind of a sample high-level overview of how I do my onboarding experience. All these arrows are usually through Zapier, all right? And we'll talk about that here in a little bit, all right? Um, all right, first we have our sales CRM. So any contact that comes in for me comes through the sales CRM. I use one-page CRM. You can use whatever CRM system that works best for yourself. Once the client says, yes, we're gonna go forth with it, then we move everything into Ignition, and that's where I prompt my engagement letter. And I also set up my deposit. For myself, it's 50% up front. That's where I prompt that to begin to that process. Once the client has accepted the engagement letter and provide their payment information along with deposit being made, the data is then sent via Zapier to Financial Sense. As a side note, this process will be going through today. All right, so we'll be talking to that today. Once they have signed and they have paid, then at that point, I then will have Financial Sense automatically start requesting the data through the client tasks based on my template. Basically, I don't want any client docs or any client information at this stage because they have not paid me yet. They have not started the engagement. I won't collect it until we get to the Financial Sense stage after something is there. All right. From there, and this is kind of what I do with my process, I have my admin who does a great job with everything she does, but there's certain things that I don't think she needs to do, right? I don't think she needs to import email addresses into Constant Contact I use for email management. I don't think she needs to put stuff in my Airtable for analysis of my data, right? Instead, I use Zapier from Financial Sense to Zapier into these different programs that I have. All right. One thing I use Financial Sense is my brain and my company. It's our source of truth. It is everything that we know that goes on with this client, all of our contact data, everything is there. So we know exactly, we get a 360 view of our client experience. From there, I'll take the data and I'll push out to various apps to ensure we have consistency among everything within our client experience. All right. Once I know we are using Mystic email system right now that is being phased out this year as we fully move into our processes and get those refined to move it into Financial Sense. So that's why that's there if you're curious what that is or why I use that. All right. So let's talk about Ignition first. How do I use Ignition to onboard my process? I already kind of mentioned this already, but Ignition I use primarily as my engagement software where I create the engagements and the proposals. I send them to my client where they review everything, maybe select their options if I give multiple options, but it's the transparent aspect of the engagement. The transparency is there. And at the addition, at that time, I collect my client's payment information and drafting applicable payments up front. All right, that's kind of how I use the onboarding process. The other aspect with this, I make sure all contact information up front is correct in Ignition before I send the proposal, because through Zapier, that's going to flow through my Financial Sense and flow through to all my different apps that I have. All right? That's kind of how I use Ignition through my process of the onboarding. Once the client has accepted it in Ignition, then I will have a Zapier connection that goes into Financial Sense. And like I said, Financial Sense is my brain of my company. It is basically telling us what we need to do for the client. It also tells us our workload per employee. I use capacity planning within Financial Sense. It basically tells us and creates the expectation that we know what we're doing. The client feels comfortable that we're being proactive in what we do. Right? So that's how I'm using Financial Sense, creates those client tasks also with the communication. It creates a great experience. My clients have navigated and actually love both softwares very well. They have seemed to adapt very well to both. All right. So from here, let's actually go through the live demo. Before I do the live demo, I want to stop real quick and make sure there's no questions. Take a quick second there. No questions I need to answer so far. If you have any questions, put in the QA. Otherwise, we'll keep going through the demo, actually do this entire process ourselves. Let's take a quick drink and we'll move on here. All right. I don't see any questions yet. Perfect. Let's keep going here. If you have any questions, like I said, put it in the Q&A. We'll answer them as we go. I'm trying to monitor the chats as we go in the Q&A queue as well. All right. So let me get to my advanced screen here. There we go. Now, before we get into actually doing it, I want to give a quick spiel. I want a quick 2-second description of what Zapier is and the basics of Zapier. Some of you have great experience, some of you have no experience. So I want to just quickly level set the playing field. In Zapier, you either have a trigger or an action. And why I say trigger or action is it's going to make sense when we actually build our Zapier in a few moments. A trigger basically is what starts the event, or the zap is what they call it. The action completes the request. I like to use the example of a fallen domino. That's what I like to do. From the fallen example, if we use that fallen domino, I usually like to say, if you want a domino to fall, the result of the falling domino is the domino is on the ground, right? But what is the trigger of that domino falling? You have to push or put some type of force on the domino to trigger the result, right? You have to start something to get your result. That's your trigger. And the action is actually a consequence of your triggers, making the domino fall. All right. At the end of the day, then your domino is on the ground. As we go through creating this demo here, as we create an automation between Zapier, between Ignition and Financial Sense, our trigger is going to be the acceptance of the Ignition proposal. The result that we hope is that the proposal and the work is now in Financial Sense. So Zapier is going to connect the two and will select the action on what occurs into Financial Sense. All right, enough about that. Let's actually go through and let's actually talk through this process ourselves. All right. So I'm going to bring up Zapier. You do need a Zapier connection to do this, or a Zapier account. Zapier does have different paid plans. It does have a free version. Keep a lookout as far as the pricing tiers and look at the different features that might work to your best interest. Before we even build the Zap, I do want to bring up here that you need to make sure your apps are connected. And by connected apps, what I mean is you need to make sure your Ignition and your Financial Sense apps are connected within Zapier. All right. I'm not going to go through the process of how to connect them. I know there's knowledge bases out there to do it. If we have time at the end, I can show you. But you want to have those connections in here because you can't build your Zap or your connection without the apps integrated. All right. So now let's actually go into creating our Zap itself. I'm going to hit my plus button to create, and I'm going to hit Zaps. The Zap itself is what we're going to do. This is our connection, right? Zap is kind of like the in-between the different programs. And we can see here, we already have our trigger. I talked about the trigger, and we have our action. Remember, trigger is what starts the process. The action is what happens, right? What's the result that you hope to get to? So let's first start with our trigger. What we're going to build the Zap is, we're going to say our Zap is when an Ignition proposal is accepted, then put the project in Financial Sense. The result is the project's in Financial Sense. The hope is once the project's in Financial Sense, then all the automation of client tasks and everything from your template kicks off right there to create a smooth experience to your client. So we're going to type Ignition in to find our app. There it is. All right, so here we go. So different events, the different trigger events here. These are the different things that are going to trigger as we go. Right here, since we want a trigger, or we want to rather put a proposal into Financial Sense once it's accepted, create that project, we want to use a trigger called proposal accepted. One quick note, we're creating a very simple Zap. There's a bunch of other events that you could do. You can even get more advanced. We're not going to get that advanced in Zapier. We're going to keep it nice and simple. So in this case, we're just going to say when the proposal is accepted, that's our trigger, then it's going to kick everything off at that point. All right. All right, here we're going to hit continue. All right. Here, you would make sure your account that you connected is listed here. I only have one account, my personal connected in here. So it's already connected for me. Hit continue. And now we want to test our trigger. It's always important to test it because if you don't test this, you don't know what's going to go on. You don't know if it's pulling the data correctly. In this case, it tested my test proposal that I created earlier today for a 1040 tax return. The client's name is Tobias Gershwin. So I know I was a music major before accounting, so you might see a lot of music and composers, and what I do is for demos. All right. So let's continue with this. This is the record we're going to use. Continue. This is a test. All right. So now we're going to type in the next app we want to connect it to. Where's the data going to be pushed to once it triggers? It's going to be pushed to Financial Sense. So let's do Financial Sense. Connect to Financial Sense. All right, so now we're going to choose what happens next. So after that, first thing we need to do once the proposal is accepted, we need to know what client does it go to first. So we're going to say find client. All right, that's what we're going to do is find client. Hit continue. Here you're going to select the account. If you only have one Financial Sense account, it will default to that. For me, I have two. I have my own personal one, and then I have the demo account. I'm going to connect this to the demo account for our Zap. All right, give a second. There we go. Now here's the action. What happens? All right. It's going to say find the client name. It wants to say from all the fields on the ignition proposal, find the client name. Here we go. Find the client name. It's going to be client name Gershwin Tobias. A quick note about this. The client name in ignition must match word by word, letter by letter, space by space, all that kind of stuff, must match exactly what it says in Financial Sense. So if in ignition it says Tobias Gershwin or Gershwin Tobias, if in Financial Sense we have it as Gershwin Toby, it's not going to find the match. It's only going to find the match if it matches exactly. All right. So if you have Toby Gershwin, it's going to create a second contact in Financial Sense. It's something Zapier does. You just need to make sure they both match. All right. So let's choose that one for now. If they can't find the client, then we want Financial Sense to create a new one. By default, I'll always click this, create a new client. And now let's go ahead and do the display name. Let's create the client here. The client's name, which is the account in Financial Sense, is going to be Tobias Gershwin. And then the contact name. This is where you're going to put the contact name. The contact name, just so you know where it comes through from ignition. All right, let me edit my client. It's going to be the contacts right here. This is where this is going to pull through. Account name in Financial Sense, contacts in Financial Sense. All right, let's go back to our Zap. And like I said, bear with me. We're creating the Zap, and then we'll put this in live play. All right, we're going to put in our contact email. Like I said, I bring everything from ignition just to make sure it's consistent. I'm using my my college's email to demo this, so just not an advertisement, just it makes it simpler for this. And then if you have a phone, if you collect it up front, put the client phone. If you have addresses, all that kind of stuff, you can put it there. All right, let's continue. All right, here's the data it found from ignition that's going to bring into Financial Sense. We're going to test the step. It's doing its test. Successful. It found what it needed to do, right? It's going to show you where things map. We are not done yet because now that we have connected the client into Financial Sense, we need to now tell it to create the work as well. So we're going to create a second step within Zapier. And this is why I say when you sign up for your Zapier subscription, look at the different levels because you might only be able to create so many levels of Zaps based on the subscription level you choose. All right, so let's create the work now. Let's go Financial Sense. All right, and Debbie, I know you sent the question or thing. I'll address that in a minute for you if we need to. Thank you for submitting that. All right, so we're going to do Financial Sense. Now we're going to say create the project now. Now we're going to say create the project. Like I said, we're creating a very simple Zap. Very simple. You can make them more complex, but we're going to make it a very simple one right now. So right now we're going to default this simple Zap and say whenever the proposal is accepted, use a template by default. I use the template in a Financial Sense called Tax Return Webinar Demo. All right, that's what I'm going to use. The client is going to bring up all your clients in Financial Sense. Don't select a default client here because if you just select Toby Gershwin, every ignition you accept, that's because every proposal accepted through ignition, is going to be defaulted to Toby. Instead, use a custom. And in the custom, hit find client, and you have to hit client ID here. Otherwise, it may not be able to find the right client. So now it's going to take whatever client ID was found in this second step and use this in the third to assign the client to. And here you can have Zapier dates when it starts and ends if you want. The template I created does a default start date and does a default due date based upon when the project's created. So I'm going to leave that blank. So I'm going to hit this continue. Now we're going to test it. All right, let's test this. All right, let's hit test step and let's see what happens here. We're not creating everything yet. We're just testing the process to make sure it works as we expected. So here we go. So it said that it sent a project from our accepted proposal from Ignition, found the client, created the project. Let's go into Financial Sense and see if it did what it was supposed to do. I'm going to projects. All right, I'm going to hit, and we can probably go right into client and find it, but I'm going to type in, let's find Tobias. All right, here's Tobias. Here is our item we just did. It has been accepted. So therefore, our project has come in from Ignition and has been created into a Financial Sense from there. And also, if I set up my template correctly, which it's actually going to kick off the client task tomorrow based on this template, the start date's the 1st, it should manage my notification of starting the 1st. All right, I'll have to look at that, what happened there. But it brought everything in from the client, so we are good to go. Right. Any questions on how to set up the Zap itself? And then we'll actually do the proposal. We'll actually go through the process. All right. Correct. Yeah. So what Debbie mentions, thank you for bringing that up. The client is not going to be in Financial Sense if they haven't signed the engagement letter. If it's a new client, correct. If it's an existing client, they could be in Financial Sense. You just have to make sure the account name in Ignition, from my experience in Ignition, matches exactly the same as the account name, and this is letter by letter, space by space, as the one in Financial Sense, based on my experience with that. So yeah, agreed. If it's a new client, they definitely will not be in Financial Sense. That's why you click that box that says create the client. You can't find it, but they are. Make sure your stuff is exactly the same. Otherwise, you could have duplicate clients. Cool. Yeah, thank you. All right, 1 second. See a question in the queue. All right. So yeah, I just kind of mentioned that. Thank you, Chet. Yeah, so like I said, if the client exists in Financial Sense already, make sure, like I said, the account name, in this case, let me bring up Tobias. All right, here, Tobias Gershwin. Make sure Tobias Gershwin is spelled the exact same, and I even mean to the point where your commas, your spaces are the exact same as they are in the contact or client details of the client name. And then it should find that client directly without duplicating a client name. Cool. Hopefully that kind of answered your question there. So, cool. Yeah, excellent question. All right, definitely watch that. One thing I'm going to have my admin do after extension season is going to be done is I'm going to have her reconcile all my Ignition versus my Financial Sense, just to make sure we don't have any duplicates. It's a one-time project, but I don't want duplicates there, and I think it's worth it for her to spend a couple hours to do that process. So yeah, great question. Thank you. All right. Okay, Steve asks, thank you. Can you set this up to only automate for new clients rather than for all signed proposals? You can set up for all signed proposals. So the Zapier is set up to basically say for every proposal that has been signed, you're going to push work into Ignition. It's not just certain clients, it's for all proposals that are accepted. That's how the Zapier is set up, the Zap. Hopefully that answered your question there. Okay. Great question. Let's go ahead and do this, right? Let's go ahead and do the process. I'm going to publish my Zap because we have confirmed it's good to go. We're going to publish the Zap. Publish it. All right, 1 second here. Been published. And I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to delete this project. I'm going to delete the client so we see what this looks like. It's a brand new client. So give me just a moment to do that. There's Tobias. Let's delete Tobias. So now for our demo company, if we go into clients, Tobias is no longer in our system. So now it's going to be like a brand new client in the door. All right, that's how we're going to treat this. All right, I'm going to go into Ignition now and let's create the proposal. Like I said, if you have created proposals before, just bear with me while we go through and create this together, accept it together to demo this entire process. All right. Matthew has a question real quick. I'll answer that and then I'll go to demo this. Can Zapier handle external software use when a proposal is accepted as a trigger? One second, let me reread the question here. External software use when a proposal is accepted as a trigger. If it's an external proposal software that doesn't have a Zapier, my understanding is there's no Zapier connection available through that external software. It does not throw or does not cause a trigger. That's my understanding. The Zap or the app has to have the capability to have Zapier configured. If the app has Zapier ability, then it could effectively be used to automate into any app that has an action. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. Okay, yeah, then you may be able to handle it that way. I'm not sure what app you use, but that's kind of how Zapier works. So great question or great point there. All right, so let's go through the process. Let's create a proposal through Ignition, accept it, and then let's go through the process of seeing what happens. All right, I'm going to do a create new proposal for Tobias. Again, they came back to us. I know I'm not going to delete that one. We're going to create a brand new one. One thing I do in Ignition to ensure I have consistency for my entire positive onboarding experience is I create templates. All right. I like templates to ensure that we have the same message being contributed to all clients. All of our tax return templates are the same, right? I have all that there. It makes it easier. It makes it so my admin doesn't have to recreate the template each time. And then sometimes we make a mistake. Maybe we attach a different engagement letter instead of a different one. Templates is how I create standardization within my onboarding process. So I'm going to use a template. I have a template. Those are ones I'm modifying these eventually, but I have a test template and I'm going to use it. All right. And by the way, I talk about templates. If you're not aware of it, I'm going to hit templates real quick. There are provided templates within Ignition that if you don't have a good one set up, you can create some templates that others have created, they have created, that you could mirror off of and maybe modify as your own. So they do provide some templates there if you don't have one there. They're really good. They just to start out with. Worst case, if you don't have a template, you don't have an engagement letter now, pick one of these, start somewhere and start modifying. That's the way I look at it sometimes. All right. Like I have my own templates. I unloaded my own templates. All right, we're going to do a 1040 tax return for the simple Zapier. Let's go next. We're going to say we're going to charge Tobias $1,000 for the tax return, and we're going to charge $1,000 for any tax advisory for the year. This is just demo data. Pricing, I know, can be debated, but this is just demo data. Normally, I would have selected, I require a credit card, I require bank details, but because we're doing a demo, I have those turned off because I don't want to charge my personal credit card $2,000. Normally, these will be selected on, but for demo purposes, I have those off at the moment. Side note too, without getting into a debate, if your firm chooses, you can have it so that way the credit card fee is passed on to the customer, or you keep it off and absorb it yourself. The option's there if you choose. I won't tell you one way or the other. It is there if that's your strategy or what you choose to do. All right. The terms, as always, is going to be your different engagement letters. I have one just for tax prep. This year I'm going to try to consolidate, but right now I have tax prep one only. Presentation, we can view what the client view looks like. And for the purpose of creating a good client experience within my onboarding process, whether existing or new, I want to see what the client sees to make sure this makes sense. On top of that, I've made mistakes on these, and I like to make sure I didn't make any mistakes within my template here. So here's my greeting that I have as my default message. We can modify it right in here to customize it. All right, here's my services, the pricing. We'll go through the acceptance page in a minute, but if there's a payment tab, it usually would be in here. All right, any terms, here's my engagement letter, and then next steps, and go from there. And then if we kind of scroll down real quick, I do have an email that goes out to my clients that I can preview that says once they accepted it, here's your next steps on what to do. All right, I'm gonna hit send, and it's gonna go to the client for Tobias. I'm gonna hit send the email. All right, and now we have sent our proposal. Let me open up real quick my other email on the other screen, bring it over to this one, and let's see what happens. All right, there it is. All right, so here's the proposal that I sent. We'll accept this a moment, review and sign. As I mentioned, I do tell the client upfront to know, hey, after you sign, be on the lookout for the financial sense checklist that will come through the client tasks. So be on the lookout for it. Review and sign. Let's do that real quick here a minute. Make sure we're good. All right, just a minute here. Perfect. Hit next. All right, Tobias has seen these services. Clear and transparent. Scope of work is now listed. That's one of the mistakes I had in the past with my onboarding. I could not give a clear scope of work from there. So we hit next. The pricing of what's going to cost, like I said, usually the page where they enter in their payments right here, but I have it deactivated so it doesn't charge my card. There we go. I can't spell Tobias, 1 second. All right, there we go. Typed in, they accepted. There we go. Now it says here, you'll get our email checklist again from our portal, which will come in to say what the next steps are going to do. In addition, back to our email, they also say here it is, you can view it, and it gives another expectation. Keep a lookout for the financial sense stuff coming up. So now let's go back into financial sense and let's see how our Zap did. All right, let's see how our Zap did. All right, I am gonna, once again, I can refresh this. I can scroll next, but I can just type Tobias. Remember before we did this, I deleted Tobias. So now this is like a new client. Tobias now came in as a new account. There's his contact information. And there we go. There's our project we just created through our Zap. So it has now created automation. So now we can start to get kicked in. Through my template within Financial Sense, I actually have it so it does the default assignee to my admin. In this case, it's me. But then the admin should get a message. Hopefully, it says something's been assigned to you. This project is ready to go. Client task is right there, ready to go, starting tomorrow. All right, and there we should go. And then the automation should kick off the client tasks as well. If not, I always have my admin double check that just to make sure something doesn't click there, right? But everything's there. We're all set to go. Any questions on how this process kind of worked a little bit? All right, we kind of saw our automation. This right here has just probably saved my admin probably about 10, 15 minutes of work just trying to chase after a client for the payment, chase after the engagement letters. It doesn't even go to the prep queue until they have signed and paid or until we start getting all the information, right? It doesn't even get there. And so it's creating efficiencies within my own workflow with my company, my staff, to say we're not even starting anything until we get what we need done. So cool. All right. All right. So now, and I'll answer to any other questions. Let me flip back to the presentation and let's finish up a couple quick things and look at the different type of results that have happened after I did that. I kind of mentioned it. But as a result for me to doing this, these are kind of things that I have noticed. With Ignition, and I can purely say this with truth, it's not a marketing or nothing, it is literally real. I have no receivables on my books. The only, and I may be lying, I'm not really lying, but I could be. The only reason why I have one receivable on my books is because they have bounced their payment through Ignition and I've stopped all work until they pay it, right? But outside of that, no receivables. If that payment went through, I would have zero, nothing owed to me, no receivables. That has been a time saver tremendously, and my cash flow has definitely benefited a lot. And in the last 30 days, it takes an average of 21 hours. If it was during tax season, I would say we're probably within a day or two on the average acceptance time for that. For Financial Sense, I calculate this statistic manually myself, but with the information I get out of Financial Sense, we have a goal with my firm. We just started tracking this in June. Our goal is to get into 95% of our client work completed within the promised time frame. All right. And right now, 80, we moved up to 82.5. And part of the reason why we got that high, we got higher, is because the client tasks are going out to the clients to prompt them to give us some work, right? We need stuff from you, and is doing all the reminders so we don't have to chase them down, and it helps us get closer to that completion time. So that's kind of how we monitor that from this process. And the automation from the onboarding has helped us tremendously. because we just let the system ask for us on some predefined client tasks within our template. All right. Now, a couple things, and we'll open up some QAs in a second. Um, but if you're interested in like Financial Sense, they do have a 14-day trial, and you can get to the 14-day trial through Financial Sense by clicking the link there. But there's also the same thing with Ignition. You can get a free trial with Ignition, a 14-day free trial from them as well. All right. So all right, so let's open up to any questions. I know we've had some questions come through, some remarks come through. There is a poll that also should have launched. I apologize I didn't mention it, but as I was going through the trials, if you want a personalized demo for one of these, click on one of the applicable answers there, and definitely someone from Financial Sense or Ignition will reach out for you there. So thank you. All right, so let's see here, some remarks here. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's all I have right now. Is there any questions on what we talked about? Anything you can answer from the Zapier aspect that you have questions, or just more about the automation aspect of this? I personally like this process because with my schedule next semester, I am teaching more classes than usual. So I need to create automated ways to get the work done quicker without less human intervention because I want less mistakes for my clients. But also, I'd rather have my admin and my staff be working on more client focused tasks than a lot of the data entry tasks as well, right? Whereas I don't need my admin entering stuff in constant contact manually when I might be able to just push it out automatically, right? So yeah, good question. Okay. Yep. All right. Any other questions on anything you guys might want to talk through? All right. Cool. Yeah. Hopefully this answered everything you guys have had questions on. Hopefully it was a good extended demo on how to set up your Zapier. I think for a lot of people, they get confused or they get scared setting up that automation. If you're stuck, right? If you're scared of it, you know what? Just try it out. Try it with one person, see what happens. There's nothing wrong with it, or just to try it out. Thank you. Yep, chats and questions in the Q&A. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sandra. Yeah, I find this topic interesting. I find it fun. I'm yes, I'm an accountant, but I love the operation automation aspect of it. It makes my life easier. I rather spend more time with my client work than doing a lot of data entry and a lot of data movements. If it was 15 years ago, I would probably say different. But with today's day and age, we can definitely move things a lot quicker to create a better experience for our staff and our clients altogether. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's some more questions. I see several more answered. Um, so I think we're good there. All right. Any other questions that you might have here in chat? And I did answer your question if it already exists. Just a reminder, if it exists, as long as the name matches, it should just flow into work and not duplicate your client. Cool. All right. Give it a. All right. All right. Any other questions? Oh, I see one that came through. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, does the free version provide assistance with automation? Zapier does have a free version of their program, but like I said, with Zapier, you have to. Okay, all right, yeah. So with Zapier, you do need to look at the different subscription levels of Zapier to see what the free version does. All right, for the version I have, I spend $30 a month for, and it works fine. It's not a with the 30 bucks I'm spending, it saves time instead of have my admin. So I kind of do that from there. All right, that kind of I can justify it from there. So, but the free version could provide what you need. You just need to look at the different tiers in Zapier. So good question. Yeah. Let's see here. Maybe some other comments here. All right. How do you send follow up? Can you clarify a little bit more, Lakeisha, on the follow up? You talking about follow up on client tasks or follow up on Ignition? All right, Steve, I just set it up and the free version works perfect. Yeah, I know Zapier has that free version, which is great. Definitely, if you're kind of cost conscious or just want to try it out, this free version is not a bad idea. Just give it a try, right? Never know till you try it. So, all right. All right, yep. How do you send the follow-up? So let's talk about that real quick through Ignition and through Zapier, through Financial Sense. Sorry, how do we send a follow-up? Through Ignition, let's start out with there. You can set up through Ignition to do a certain number of follow-ups, and the follow-ups are usually through the settings. You can do the follow-up. I think you can do up to 3. Give me a second here. I'm going to move this to the other screen just to make sure I don't show you my client data when I click on this. I don't think it will, but give me a second here. Here it is. All right. You can, through the general settings, you can set up proposal reminders right there to send how many days in between. Do you want to bug them every day? Do you want to give them some time? And the maximum number of reminders. So you can set that up by default for all people within Ignition. But I believe you could do it with the proposal itself. I know you can go to the proposal or a list of your pipeline and manually send it. I don't want to do it because I don't want to expose my clients, but you can do it there. I believe within the client specifically, we can modify it. That one, I don't have the answer for you right now, but definitely question maybe to ask Ignition from there. But you can create a default proposal for all clients. For Financial Sense, you can create the number of follow-ups, all right, via the client tasks right here. And so if I click this follow-up, you can send how many reminders. I usually have mine set every 2 days because I want the work done. I don't want to send on it. And you say what day it starts, or you can send it right now if you choose. I'm going to send this right now, show what that looks like. And it'll automatically kick out, and then it'll tell you, okay, when's the next reminder, all that type of stuff. All right. And let's see if it came through. Give me a second here. All right, yep, there it is. There's the reminder that it was sent to all my clients to complete that client work. And like I said, I have this set for every 2 days for my follow-ups. Clients have gravitated to this pretty quick because it's bugging them. I don't need to get involved. So well, does that kind of answer your question on the follow-ups, hopefully? Okay, cool. All right, no, great questions so far. Great questions, real quick. Um, are there, we can, all right, any other questions? All right. All right, any other questions? I know we're getting close to the 14 minutes here. Let's see if there's anything. Okay, cool. All right, yeah, we're about 14 minutes early. I think we'll call it unless you have any other questions. Um, Definitely, like I said, I guess the closing notes here. Don't be afraid to try out the automation if you're scared. That's okay. Just try it. I mean, worst case, you can disable the automation. It never hurts to you try it, right? Just give it a shot. And you can always improve it as you go. It's not dead set in stone. My onboarding checklist that I showed you, workflow, that probably took about 20 different revisions before I got to the point I did here. So cool. Great questions. Cool. All right. So if you have no other questions or no other chats, thank you all for attending. I really hope this was beneficial. As always, if you have any questions on Ignition or on Financial Sense, definitely reach out to them. They're great people to talk to. The customer service is wonderful, and they're definitely here to help you succeed as well. So, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right. Thanks. See you all soon.